My delusional stepdad ruins my $900 prom dress out of spite. Now we're taking him to court for the damage. And the drama unfolds. It was supposed to be the happiest year of high school, senior year. The capstone before entering the adult world. Like many of my friends, I had spent years dreaming of prom night, where I'd wear the perfect dress, share laughs with friends, and dance like there was no tomorrow. But as I prepared for that final celebration, I found myself caught in a bitter battle with my stepdad, a man who should have been a supportive figure but instead saw my success as a threat to his control over my mother and our household. My journey to prom night would turn into a lesson on resilience, true family, and finding my worth beyond the bitter resentment of one person. Growing up, my family was far from picture perfect. My parents had separated when I was young, and my father, though loving, suffered a life-altering accident that left him unable to care for me full-time. By age 10, I was sent to live with my mother, her husband, and his 2 sons. That was the beginning of a decade-long struggle for acceptance, validation, and understanding. I felt like an outsider, and no one made that clearer than my stepdad, who never let me forget that I was another responsibility, a phrase he would use in arguments and subtle digs whenever finances or family decisions came up. While my mom did her best to defend me, the unspoken tension weighed on every interaction. My stepdad held his 2 sons in high regard, making allowances and sacrifices to ensure their comfort, while I was left to fend for myself emotionally and financially. The animosity was palpable, simmering beneath every family dinner, every whispered conversation, and every holiday where my presence felt like an obligation rather than a welcome addition. By the time I reached high school, I had become fiercely independent. I took on part-time jobs, juggling work with studies, and saved every dollar I could. My goal was clear: to support myself through college and enjoy the milestones. Like prom, without depending on anyone, my savings were my own hard-earned achievements, something I cherished as proof of my resilience and hard work. For the past 2 years, I had worked tirelessly, not just to save but to show my stepdad, and, honestly, myself, that I didn't need his approval or his support to make something of my life. Then came the matter of the prom dress. I had saved enough to buy a dress I loved, one that felt uniquely me, a dark green gown with delicate rhinestones and a flowing train that sparkled like the night sky. To me, it wasn't just a dress, it was a symbol of the independence I had fought so hard to achieve. A reward for the countless hours I'd spent working and saving. I showed it to my mom, who was proud of me, while my stepdad, in predictable fashion, scoffed at the price tag, deeming it irresponsible and wasteful. His contempt only grew when he realized I was unwilling to fund his son's prom expenses. His golden child deserved to have a grand prom experience, according to him, and he thought it was only fair that I contribute. I didn't think so. It was my money, and I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I had spent years managing my finances responsibly, even contributing to the household by paying for streaming services. But I drew the line at supporting someone who had never shown me a shred of kindness. The real blow came when I woke up one morning to find my dress missing. My heart pounded as I searched the house, hoping that it was some sort of misunderstanding, when I found my stepdad smirking, claiming he was washing the dress for me. My heart sank. Rushing to the laundry room, I saw the gown, my beautiful dress, being battered in the heavy-duty cycle. The damage was irreversible. Rhinestones had fallen off, the glitter had washed out, and the once beautiful fabric was a mangled mess. I couldn't stay in that house. With tears streaming down my face, I packed the ruined dress into a trash bag, grabbed my essentials, and headed to my friend's place. My mom was at work and couldn't help, so I texted her pictures of the dress, explaining the entire situation. I was furious, heartbroken, and betrayed. My stepdad had gone too far. Destroying my dress was not just an act of pettiness, it was a calculated move to hurt me, to remind me of my place, and to make me feel powerless. But I wasn't going to let him win. My mother, though heartbroken and angry, promised that she'd help me get justice. Together, we contacted the police. While they couldn't classify the destruction as theft since the dress hadn't been stolen, they advised us to pursue compensation through small claims court. My uncle, a supportive figure in my life, stepped in to offer help. He suggested replacing the dress, contributing funds, and and reassured me that I didn't have to feel alone in this fight. Over the next few days, I experienced an outpouring of support from friends and extended family. My uncle went above and beyond, ordering a new dress from the same boutique, making sure that I'd still get to enjoy my prom night despite everything that had happened. My mom, meanwhile, started to see the cracks in her marriage for what they were. She recognized the controlling behavior and realized the toll it had taken on both of us. She even considered separation, knowing that her priority was to protect me and rebuild our relationship without interference. For a while, it felt like I had lost the war. But as I reflected, I realized that my stepdad's actions had, ironically, strengthened my resolve. I learned that family isn't defined by blood or marriage but by the people who respect, support, and love you unconditionally. My uncle's unwavering support, my friend's kindness, and my mother's eventual stand made me realize that I wasn't alone. I had a family that valued me, that celebrated my achievements, and that respected my boundaries. On prom night, when I finally got to wear my new dress, I felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, pride, and a sense of triumph. I had survived a storm, not just of ruined fabric but of resentment and control. I had learned to value myself beyond anyone else's perception of my worth. And as I looked around at my friends, laughing and dancing, I knew I had found my own place in the world, a place defined by respect, resilience, and love. This story is a reminder that self-worth doesn't come from the approval of those around us but from within. It's about setting boundaries, standing up for yourself, and refusing to let others dictate your value. Sometimes, even family can turn toxic, but resilience, self-respect, and the support of those who truly care can help you rise above the negativity. Life may throw challenges your way, but it's how you respond that defines your journey and shapes your future. My fiancé's best friend ruined my life. How we stood up for each other and cut off the toxic relationship. It's a cold Saturday evening, and the weight of my thoughts is as heavy as the mist that's settling in the air outside my apartment window. I'm staring at my reflection in the glass, though all I can really see is the frustration etched on my face. Everything I believed about relationships, love, friendship, loyalty, is spinning, unraveling. How did we get here? My fiancé, Liam, has a best friend, Jason, who's turning our relationship into a battlefield. For months, I've endured Jason's sneers, his subtle digs, and manipulative games. He isn't just a rude friend, he's a master at locating weak spots. The kind who finds the exact button to push to get a reaction and keeps pressing it. His words linger in my mind even now, replaying like a bad movie scene I can't stop watching. And worst of all, no one, not even Liam, has stood up to him. Liam was my rock when we first started dating. Kind and considerate, he always made me feel safe. He's the type of person who'd give you the shirt off his back. A self-proclaimed, recovering people-pleaser. Maybe that's why, even when his friend Jason started targeting me with his toxic behavior, I told myself it was just friendly teasing, or an awkward phase. But after 5 years together, I knew better. The comments had started off small, sarcastic remarks about my clothes. Backhanded compliments, but they grew meaner, deeper, and more cutting. Each remark left tiny wounds that added up to a festering pain. I remember the moment when things crossed the line. We were out with friends for dinner, and Jason, jokingly, called me out in front of everyone for being too sensitive. He laughed it off, calling it constructive criticism, but the way he said it made everyone feel uncomfortable. My friends, who'd seen me hold it together through these remarks before, looked at me with pity, as if they knew that staying silent this time would break me. By the time we got home, I couldn't hold back the wave of emotions I'd been holding at bay for so long. The tears came without warning, and I found myself telling Liam everything. Every slight Jason had inflicted. Every time I'd bitten my tongue for the sake of peace. I told him about the times Jason had cornered me at social gatherings, spinning lies about things I supposedly said or did to make me look bad. I was desperate for Liam to understand that Jason's behavior wasn't just annoying, it was malicious. Liam held me as I cried, promising that he would speak to Jason, when he told me a few days later that Jason had apologized. I dared to hope that things might change, but as the weeks went by, nothing improved. In fact, things got worse. The comments became sharper, the lies more elaborate, and my breaking point grew closer. When I broke down a second time, Liam admitted something that left me feeling betrayed. Jason hadn't really apologized. Instead, he brushed off my feelings as overly sensitive. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was starting to see that Jason wasn't just antagonistic, he was deeply manipulative. And his target was me. He wasn't going to change. And Liam wasn't going to confront him. The next few weeks were a blur of anxiety and hurt. Jason's barbs began to affect my health. I was losing sleep. Constantly on edge, anticipating the next insult. I told Liam that I couldn't continue attending events where Jason would be present, even if it meant isolating myself from our circle of friends. He seemed to understand but kept hoping for some sort of compromise. Unable to cut Jason off completely. It wasn't just about friendship. Liam and Jason shared a long history. A friendship that had spanned years and survived college moves, even family dramas. They'd been through thick and thin. And part of me could see why Liam found it so difficult to let go. Jason was intertwined with Liam's life in ways I might never fully understand. But that didn't make the pain any easier to bear. One night, after another public insult from Jason, I confronted Liam again, more hurt and angry than ever. "Why is it so hard to stand up for me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I'm not asking you to throw away your friendship. Just to set boundaries." Liam struggled to find the words. And his hesitation stung. He told me he didn't want to create conflict but assured me he was on my side. It was a familiar refrain. One that no longer provided comfort. I realized then that I was reaching a point of no return. I couldn't marry someone who wouldn't protect me, who wouldn't defend my dignity. Then, as if the universe was testing our resolve, an invitation arrived for Jason's wedding. Jason's fiancée, Lily, was my best friend, complicating things even further. How would I attend their wedding? Stand by as Jason's target? My heart ached, but I knew I had to set boundaries to preserve my mental health. It all came to a head one weekend when Liam finally drafted a message to Jason, explaining how hurtful his actions had been and demanding that they stop. I reviewed it with him, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. This was a moment I'd longed for, a clear boundary, a line in the sand. But Jason's response shattered any hope I had left. Jason exploded, denying everything and lashing out, turning the situation into a spectacle. He accused me of manipulating Liam and even threatened to set the record straight by telling Liam's family his twisted version of events. I couldn't believe the audacity. It was as if he was daring Liam to pick sides. In the days that followed, I found myself alternating between tears and laughter at the absurdity of it all. Jason's cruelty was surreal, a sad reminder of how someone could wear the mask of friendship while harboring such venom underneath. The final blow came when Lily, my best friend, sent a message backing Jason. She painted me as the problem, claiming I was exaggerating and even inventing the conflict. I thought Lily would understand, would see the damage Jason was causing. But she was as entangled in his influence as Liam had been. I felt the bitter sting of betrayal all over again. Liam and I took a long, hard look at our relationship. The weight of everything that had happened lay heavy between us, like a wound that wouldn't heal. But in that pain, we found something profound, a commitment to build a future free from toxic influences. Liam decided to step away from the project he shared with Jason. A decision that cost him deeply but spoke volumes about his dedication to our relationship. We mourned the friendship that had been lost, the people who had once meant so much to us but who had revealed their true colors. In the end, it was an act of courage, not weakness, to let go. As we moved forward, we realized that life was too short to be weighed down by people who brought negativity and pain. The space we created by setting boundaries filled with something much more valuable: peace, understanding, and a deeper connection between us. We'd weathered a storm together, and though it left scars, it also left us stronger. Looking back, I see Jason's betrayal as a harsh lesson in loyalty and boundaries. Love means standing up for one another, drawing lines that protect the peace and respect in a relationship. Liam's choice to put me first didn't just save our relationship, it set the foundation for a future built on trust and mutual respect. For anyone caught between loyalty to a friend and loyalty to a partner, remember this: true loyalty isn't blind. It's a commitment to protect the people who respect, love, and support you. And sometimes, choosing peace over chaos is the bravest act of love. My mother moved out, moved away with her fiancé, and left me feeling abandoned. She was a terrible mother. When I was young, Mom was my whole world. From morning routines to bedtime stories. Her presence filled every corner of my life. But everything started shifting the moment my parents separated. What I didn't know was that their divorce would leave me balancing on the fragile line of an old life I loved and a new reality that felt foreign. Mom was moving forward, and I was slowly becoming part of her past. I stayed with my dad during the weekdays. But every month, I'd spend a weekend with Mom. Initially, it felt like just a change in scenery. But one particular weekend, she introduced me to her fiancé, Sarah, and announced with pride that she was engaged. The happiness in her eyes was unmistakable. But I couldn't shake the feeling of having lost something irreplaceable. Mom wasn't just Mom anymore. She was part of a new world that I was barely included in. And she seemed more excited about that world than the one she left behind. As the days passed, the distance between us became both literal and emotional. Mom moved across the water. A journey that took hours by car, ferry, and more driving, a trip I could only make once a month. Our once frequent chats turned into quick, routine texts. I wanted to belong in her life again, but her world seemed to thrive without me. It was during one of my visits that I overheard her talking with Sarah. She mentioned how her life felt complete, how she had finally found happiness. I remember feeling a strange mix of anger and sadness. Was her happiness only possible without me in her daily life? The thought gnawed at me until it became a wound I couldn't ignore. When I confronted her, I told her everything I felt, that her new life felt like it had no room for me. Instead of understanding, she dismissed my feelings as exaggerated. I left that visit feeling like a stranger in her world, nursing a heartache that seemed to deepen with each passing day. Returning to my dad's house didn't bring relief either. My frustration was too great to ignore, affecting my relationships with everyone around me. My uncle, who was like a second parent, noticed the change in me. I finally opened up to him, explaining my anger and pain. His understanding helped soothe my loneliness, even for a short while. But when I apologized to Mom, hoping for reconciliation, her response was colder than I'd expected. You had no right to share our issues with others, she told me. It was as if every step I took toward healing only widened the distance between us. Then, during one of the worst weeks of my life, I had a severe allergic reaction and ended up in the hospital. I remember desperately hoping she'd come see me, bring comfort the way only a mother could. Instead, she sent a text, a selfie of her and Sarah, smiling at a cabin. I stared at that photo, feeling the sting of rejection settle into something colder, heavier. It was a moment of stark realization. My mother had moved on. And in her mind, I was a part of her old life. The months that followed were a blur of therapy sessions and silent battles. With my counselor's help, I began to put my feelings into words, to acknowledge the anger, the sadness, and the hope that my mother might one day realize what she'd left behind. But every visit, every brief phone call, seemed to reinforce the painful truth that her happiness didn't include me. Despite everything, I clung to the hope of a restored relationship. For Thanksgiving, I traveled to her home, hoping we might reconnect. Yet, the visit was more isolating than ever. Her friends and new family members surrounded her, and I felt like an afterthought. During one family gathering, I overheard someone ask who I was. Mom's dismissive response stung deeply, a reminder that I no longer fit comfortably into her life. I kept quiet, smiling through the pain, waiting for a moment where she might look at me and remember the closeness we once shared. But that moment never came. Back home, I struggled with conflicting emotions. I hated feeling angry at her, yet I couldn't ignore the resentment growing within me. I continued therapy, each session helping me untangle a knot of emotions that had become too painful to bear. My counselor suggested a joint session with Mom, a mediated space where I could express myself. I agreed, but the attempt at communication felt forced, as if the wounds between us were too deep to heal in a single conversation. Months later, on my birthday, she surprised me with a photo album. Each picture was a memory, a fragment of our past, but the collection felt hollow, like a summary of moments that no longer belonged to me. Most of the photos were of her wedding or recent events, with only a few scattered images from when we were close. Holding that album, I felt like I was gazing into the life of someone I used to know. Someone who had once loved me without reserve. As I flipped through the pages, A realization settled over me. Perhaps mom had moved on. Not because she didn't love me, but because she needed something different. Something I couldn't provide. It was a painful thought, but one that helped me find some peace. I didn't need to measure my worth by her approval, nor did I need her validation to feel loved. In time, I began to focus on myself, to rebuild my identity beyond the relationship that had once defined me. I reconnected with old friends, poured myself into my studies, and even picked up new hobbies that filled the empty spaces in my heart. The journey was far from easy, and there were days when the loneliness felt unbearable. But each step forward was a victory, a reminder that my life held value, even if it wasn't part of hers. Reflecting on everything, I realized that some people come into our lives for a season, while others stay forever. My mother's love, though not everlasting, had shaped me in ways I was only beginning to understand. Her departure forced me to grow, to seek strength within myself rather than in someone else's approval. And though our relationship may never return to what it once was, I could finally accept that as part of my story. A chapter that had taught me resilience and self-worth. In the end, I emerged from the heartbreak not as a victim of abandonment but as a survivor of self-discovery. I had learned to carry my own heart, to fill it with the love and acceptance I once sought from others. And while I may never fully understand the choices my mother made, I no longer needed to. I had built a life that was whole, a life that was mine, and that, I realized, was enough.